What's the single most important factor in getting your team behind you?
I think one of my favourite kind of lines is great teams are made of great individuals. So the number one thing is whilst you're working in teams, you look for real individual responsibility from every member of your team. Doesn't matter what role he or she's playing. We kind of really look at what is your function, how are you going to improve that function. So it's understanding that yes, you're working in a team, but your individual responsibility is the actual number one thing to me that sets teams apart.
Would you say that the principles of sports leadership can be applied successfully to other types of organisations, particularly in running a housing association or a business, which not only has staff to consider, but ultimately their key stakeholders and their tenants?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way of working in partnership is absolutely crucial in sport and business. So you've got to make sure all your stakeholders are aligned with what you're trying to do. But I still think the number one thing is knowledge, that the more you can actually capture knowledge and share this knowledge with the various stakeholders within the business, and really always trying to make these marginal gains, the more effective you're going to be as a business. And that applies exactly the same to sport and the same with business. It's how you capture knowledge, how you study it, how you then share it with the people who can actually help you and then deliver the final product.
Sir Clive, I know you're a big advocate in coaching of planning ahead. Do you think that this would be a key strategy in our sector?
Absolutely. I don't think you can do enough planning. I think in the sporting world, you're always trying to win the game on Saturday. You're always going to get judged on fairly short-term results at times. And business really is no difference. You've still got to get the next deal and perform on a day-to-day basis. But I think part of it, you've always got to be a long-term strategy where there is a great line about working on the business as well as in the business. Many sports coaches and leaders sometimes just get so wrapped up in the business that they just don't give themselves any time to kind of step back and sort of think of the bigger picture and just planning ahead. And so planning is absolutely crucial. So personally, I'm planning every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year. I've always got these kind of processes of working through, and they can always be adjusted. But you've also have the back of the mind that you've got to deliver at the weekends, but you've got to spend some time to work on the business as well as in the business. I believe you're going to be a really effective coach or leader.
Can I ask you a technology question? You've obviously had great experience in running businesses. How have you brought that business into the world of sport, and how do you feel that's benefited?
Well, one of my key lines is always, or my key thoughts is, whoever wins in IT tends to win. Sport's no difference. If you go behind the scenes of any successful sports team, the amount of knowledge and software and IT they're using is amazing. And the big thing to me, though, is it's not just for the specialist IT people. What I demand is every coach, every athlete, every player really has to learn the IT skills to be able to actually work the software and evaluate things themselves, because the more you can get them using IT to create knowledge and study, the better you're going to be. So people are often surprised when I talk about IT in sport. It's huge, but it's every athlete having the ability just basically to understand their performance, look at their performance, finds ways of doing things different, and the IT side of the business is absolutely huge. But again, it comes down to knowledge and really using IT to increase your knowledge and beat the person you're trying to compete with.
I think you may well have answered this question, but do you believe that successful businesses, like successful sports teams, need to be open to new ideas and embrace new technologies and innovations?
I think it's not only new ideas. I think that the best analogy I can give business, and I ran a small business and I was really guilty of not doing this, is that what I've found in the business world and the sports world is that when you're doing well, you tend to want to celebrate. And without being too flippant, you sort of go down the pub and have a glass of champagne or a beer and you celebrate. When things are not going well, it's a Monday morning meeting, 7, 8 o'clock, everyone in, sort of panic. To me, you've got to reverse that trend. So in other words, when things aren't going well, don't overreact, because you don't become a bad individual or a bad team overnight. Go down the pub, have a beer. But when the things are going well, that's when I think you have the 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock Monday morning meetings, and you really study why you've been successful. And then, when you study them, how can you do them better? how can you make these marginal gains, or how can you do things 100 things 1% better, all these kind of business sayings. But they only check in if you actually know why you've won. And I think when you've won, then the sort of new ideas start to come through. What else can we do? And then you'll find people around the room. Sometimes you get certain individuals just really good at thinking, okay, if we did that, we'd be even better. And that's what I think we certainly did with the rugby team. When we started to win regularly, we became really quite aggressive about why did we win, how can we do even better, and not sitting back and being complacent and saying, well, that's it, done, let's all go home for the weekend. And it's a real mindset change, it's a cultural shift. But if you have that culture, you've got to always be trying to find new ideas, new thought processes that apply in sport and business. And you know, when you get that, it's good. Because also you have these Monday morning meetings. You know, you can be quite tough with people when you've won and things are going well. The time not to be tough is when things are not going well. To me, it's the opposite. Where you think when you're tough, people respond because they know they're not under threat. You know, think you're in a good position, but we've got to always try to raise the bar. And I think that's just a mindset.
And lastly, one of the things that I've always liked about you is that your this word that you coined, critical non-essentials. Clearly, people have to find their list of critical non-essentials. I mean, how does one, do you think, go about finding those?
Well, it's first we've got to define what critical non-essentials are. They're things, as it says, they're kind of critical but not essential. So they're not the big things. You know, in your business, you'll know the big things you have to get right. It's the real detail, and that's where what I described before about, you know, the Monday morning meetings where you study. What are the real details? And what I've found in business and sport, most people remember you for the small things that you do and not the big things that you do. And if you get that mindset right, and there's all sorts of amazing examples, and that's when you need people who can really think about what would make the difference. I mean, why would people remember us? How can we do the deal better? And this is kind of the, you know, the non-essentials. In other words, life will go on if we don't do this, but if we do this, you know, maybe people remember us in a little bit different way. It's a great saying, critical non-essentials. They're kind of critical, but they're not essential.
Clive, thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.